Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for being here to start this wonderful Yom Iyun on Purim. I know most of you, but for those whom I don't know, my name is Peta Pellach. Originally from Australia, now living in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, and delighted to be here. I also have to give a disclosure at the beginning of this presentation. I've chosen to talk about the hidden heroism of Esther, in brackets Hadassah, Esther, that is Hadassah, but that's because my Hebrew name is Esther. I'm an Esther. So I have an interest in promoting Esther because I also believe that that moment when a parent names a child is that moment of prophecy. You know, that beautiful idea that when we name our children, we actually impose on them certain qualities. And so I have something to live up to and an interest in promoting Esther as heroic. I should also say that my sister, immediately after me, is Hadassah. We were both named after 3 out of 4 of our great-grandmothers, who were all Esther. So it's a very strong strain in my family and very, very important for me. So today I actually want to explore with you, and we only have a short amount of time together, so I don't think I'll do this justice, but we'll do our best. 2 concepts, 2 ideas. The first one is about hiddenness and the hiddenness of Esther. And that's connected, of course, even with the name Esther. We'll come back to that in one moment. Esther, from the word seter, hiddenness, and the fact that she has 2 names, Hadassah. So I want to know what she was hiding and why. And I want to know what we know about her and what we don't know about her. I want to know if she's choosing to hide or whether it's hidden from us as the reader. And I want to know also what was hidden from her. And the second issue is the issue of heroism. I want to ask, what is a hero? Was Esther truly a hero? Or is the real hero of the story Mordechai? Because I'm always offended as an Esther, that at the end of reading this wonderful Megillah, we sing Baruch Mordechai HaYehudi, as if he's the hero of the story, and Esther was just sort of the vessel or the tool that enabled his heroism to emerge. So the question is, was she really the hero? Was he? Were they both? And in what ways were they heroic? So having said that I'm an Esther, I also have to say I love the Megillah. I love the story. It's a beautiful story and it's beautifully structured. As a literary work, it's amazing. It has this, what we call the chiastic structure, where we start at the beginning. We might have A, B, C, D, A in terms of the structure of this story, and it does it so brilliantly. Anybody, a simple reading can reveal these things, but a closer reading will reveal more and more of layers of these parallels. It's an amazing story. And it starts, of course, with a king giving 2 feasts. You know, we see this king. Now, at the beginning, you could say, I'm just about to read or see a farce, because it is farcical. Here's the king, so worried about his, sorry, Moshe, I'll ask you to take the other sources. So here's the king, so worried about his respect, I think, or the fact that, you know, he wants everybody to love him. So he's got to do that, and then he's got to have the diplomats and the special people, and how do you please everybody all the time? And then at the end of the feast, it seems that, again, the farce continues because he invites his wife to parade herself. It's not exactly clear what she's requested to do. She refuses, like any good woman would. And then he passes a farcical, what a law. The law says that all women should obey their husbands. Well, we all live in the real world here. Come on. So I even asked the question, is this my kids would ask it this way, is this for real? Could this have happened? Could a king have tried to pass such a law? Well, I'm in Israel today, and I was just listening on the radio before I came here that the rabbis want to pass a law about how women should use the mikveh. This is a topic for another time, but perhaps we should consider that maybe there are people foolish enough to think they can regulate how women live their lives. Yet we'll put that aside for the moment and try not to be too political, even though this is a heavily political story we're reading here. And we'll say this: it's a farce. And the thing that what makes it even more difficult, complicated for me is the king doesn't even pass the law by himself. Like he makes sure that it's everybody else who's told him that that's the solution to pass the law. So you have a king who's very busy promoting himself, wanting to show everybody that how great he is and wanting to be beloved. And at the same time, he doesn't do anything of his own initiative. He makes sure that it looks like everybody else is responsible, so he can deny responsibility, right? He can deny responsibility for the law if required. Now, I do want to add one other layer to the story. Just let's give Rena a place to sit before we... Thank you so much. Thank you. I do want to add one more layer to this. When we read this opening chapter, we read it as if the plates and the vessels which the king is using are the vessels from the temple. Now, of course, it's not explicit in the text that that's the case, but when we read with our trop, we make it explicit in the way we read. And this is another beautiful thing about the story and the way that we've adapted it. The story itself is only the framework. The text itself is only the framework for our understanding. There are so many layers of hiddenness in this text, and some of them can come out in the trop, in the way we read. And some of them will only come out by deep reading, and some of them will only come up in the oral tradition through Midrash. They're not in the text itself. To me, that's richness, that's beauty. In a literary sense, it's beautiful, but also, I have to say, from the point of view of what is history, and particularly what is Jewish history, it's an amazing story. I like to suggest that this story is meta-historical. That is, I think I would be hard-pressed to find good historical evidence outside the Jewish tradition that the Purim story happened. And the worst part for me of that is that, or the best part, the worst part, the part that's most difficult is there's a story of us committing a massacre, going around killing thousands of people. Now, I wish that that had never happened. I would be happier that that had not happened. And I can read this story wondering, did it happen? There are no records outside the Jewish records that it happened. Or I can read the story saying, that's not what it's about at all. That's not what matters here at all. Because this story is meta-historical. And I want to come back to that as we go through. So on the source sheets, the first source that we have is when we first meet Esther. And we've just been introduced to Mordecai, and we learned that Mordecai has good lineage. He is a Benjamite. Mordecai has good lineage as a Benjamite. And what does it mean to be a Benjamite? It means that he's related to King Saul as a Benjamite. It means that he is perhaps destined to face Amalek. And this is really, you know, part of the structure of the story. It's part of the beauty of the story that it's structured to face Amalek. Are we struggling with seeing the sources? I do apologize. I don't have extra, I don't think, no, but we'll just look on with each other if that's all right. So he is destined to face Amalek as a Benjaminite. But there are other things about being a Benjaminite as well. Think about the relationship of Benjamin to Rachel. And I want to come back to that. Rachel dies in childbirth for Benjamin. Let's keep that in mind as we go through the story, because she's another hero of Jewish history, if you like, in a different way. So we've met Mordechai, and normally at this stage I would ask someone in the group to read aloud, but because we're recording here, I'm going to take the liberty of reading aloud for you, and I'm just going to read in the English when we first meet Esther. And we learned that he, that's Mordechai, had brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maiden was of comely form and comely appearance. I want to come back to this double yafeh, Yifat Torah, and Mareh, Tovat Mareh. She's got this double beauty mentioned there. And Mordechai took her to himself for a daughter. So that's when we first meet her. So notice what we know about her. The first thing we know is she had two names. That's the first thing we learn about her. And it's very interesting because often in the Tanakh, we do come across people with multiple names, but we're not usually introduced to them right at the outset with both the names. Actually, often we have to put together that it's the same person, just using an alternative name. But here we're introduced to her straight away as a person with two names. And there's another doubling that I just mentioned, the double dose of beauty. So the one thing is that she is beautiful of appearance, you might say. One way of looking at this is she's beautiful of appearance objectively. And the other one is she's beautiful of appearance. People are somehow impacted when they meet her and see some inner beauty. Something comes out. I was reminded when I was just looking at this again of another thing that was beautiful of appearance in a double way, and that was the first Etz HaChaim in the Gan Eden. It also has this double beauty, according to when Chava first sees it. The first thing she sees, yes, it looks good, but she also recognizes that it's good to eat. So there's a doubling up of beauty here, which we do not see with very many personalities in the Tanakh. So we've had this doubling here of her beauty. And the other thing we know is she had a very strong relationship with Mordechai. Of course, Midrash takes this everywhere. There is even a Midrash that when she was orphaned, Mordechai didn't have anyone to breastfeed her, so he developed breasts and was able to measure. Now, Midrash, I can see Ellie's face already. I know she doesn't like this sort of Midrash that takes us into the world of fantasy. But then again, I want you to think what mother's milk symbolizes in Judaism, and to recognize that we don't have to read. I always paraphrase Rambam, Maimonides, in Moreh Nevuchim, when he's talking about the snake in the Garden of Eden. That anybody who really thinks that a snake stood up and spoke to people is a fool. That doesn't happen. That anybody who doesn't believe is a greater fool. Because that's not the way you read things here. It's not the way you read Midrashim. What are we talking about? What is the Midrash trying to say when it says that Mordechai even was able to nourish Esther with milk? Saying she imbued from the beginning his values, if you like, his genes, everything about him, she imbued. So although it's the relationship, it says that she's a cousin. That's what we can understand. But it seems that the relationship is much more bonded than that. Or there's a totally alternative Midrash. And again, be very careful. You can't have both of them. You can't have Mordechai both breastfeeding her and then marrying her. You choose which Midrash you like. But one of the Midrashim also has them, more than one. There's a stream of Midrash which says they actually married each other. And that's what he says when the verse is actually saying that Mordechai took her to himself. They're using the word there in terms of marriage. So, and that not that she's a bat, but that the bait, read bat as bait, as his, if you like, his housewife. That's a terrible word, but she's much more than that. But that's an alternative reading. But there's an incredible close bond, and we learn this from the first verse that we read about her when she's first introduced. Let's move on. And it came to pass when the king's order and decree were heard, and when many maidens were gathered to Shushan, the capital, to the custody of Haggai, that Esther was taken to the king's house to the custody of Haggai, keeper of the women. Now, again, I look at this and I say, was taken? Was that by force? Was there a discussion with Mordechai before she went? Was it his idea? Was it her idea? We all will have been taught to read this in different ways. I grew up with the tradition that Mordecai and Esther, but particularly Mordecai, planned this, that they knew it had to happen, that it was set up so that she would go to that house. But the text itself doesn't tell us that. The text says she was taken, and so one thing you could start to ask are the other questions. You see, my mind does this. It says, Bathsheba taken to David. Did she go? Was she willing? We have all these other questions in Jewish history about when women go to places, what level of choice do they have when women are taken to places? But it seems here that Esther is pretty much in control of her situation. And I get that by reading further on, because it says she was taken to the custody of Haggai, the keeper of women, and the maiden pleased him, and she won his favor, and he hastened her ointments and her portions to give them to her, and the 7 maidens befitting to give her from the king's house, and he changed her and her maidens to the best portions in the house of the women. Okay, so Esther here is making good. So whatever her situation was when she came, whether there was choice involved or not choice involved, she's now taken some control of the situation. By the way, I absolutely love the Midrash, which links this pasuk we just read to her ability to keep Jewish law throughout her time in the palace. And it's all connected with the 7 maidens. Some of you will be familiar with this. She was given 7 maidservants. What does 7 relate to? The 7 days of the week. But just a minute. Shushan doesn't have a 7-day week. We're the ones with the 7-day week. So she has created a situation, according to Midrash, and I love it, that she had a different maidservant every day. It helped her keep the calendar, know when it was Shabbat, but it also helped her keep her identity, because the maidservant that was the Shabbat maidservant didn't know that on other days she behaved differently, and the servants through the week didn't know that she behaved differently on Shabbat. So the idea of setting up the 7 is really wonderful. Was that Haggai's idea? What did he know? Or was it Esther's idea that she sets herself up this way? But he likes her. Now, who is Haggai? There's a whole, again, body of knowledge on who Haggai was. But for our purposes, he's an important person. And Esther knows if she is to advance, she needs to be on his good side. And she does it. He likes her. She plays along with him. And we'll see even more of that in a moment. And then in the next verse, Esther did not reveal her nationality or her lineage, for Mordecai had ordered her not to reveal it. Now, as we've just seen, we learned a whole lot before we learned this. We didn't read about the discussion before she goes in, that Mordecai says to her, you're not going to say who you are. We didn't read any of that. What we read is that she now is making a decision to follow what Mordecai wanted from her, even though Mordecai is not there. And this is what we call yirah, this idea of being aware of what's wanted from you, even when it cannot be enforced. Mordecai is not going to do anything to her. She is now fully in control of her situation. She is making the choice. And when Esther makes that choice not to reveal who it was, it's the milk, the suckling. She's got this value. She doesn't yet, it appears, know why. Although there is a midrash that says the following. When Esther was about to go into the palace, when it says she was taken, at that point she had a glimpse of prophecy. And that's why she's listed as one of the 7 female prophets. She had this glimpse of prophecy that she would know that her being in the palace was for the sake of the Jewish people. So having this glimpse of prophecy that she was going to be there for the sake of the Jewish people was an amazing prophecy for her. But again, according to this, the minute that she went into the palace, prophecy disappeared. She was alone. So she'd had a glimpse of prophecy before she went in, but going in and being in, prophecy disappears. And this again is a contrast, an amazing contrast to two other women who had been in foreign palaces, Sarah and Rivka. Remember, both of them had experienced being with the king of Egypt, or royalty, we'll leave it for king of Egypt at the moment. Now, in that situation, both of them had prophecy, according to our reading of the text. They weren't alone, and that's why they could be brave. But according to our reading of this text, God was hidden, Hashem's face was hidden the minute she entered the palace. So she really was alone. And not revealing her identity was a huge test then, in many ways, because she was alone and she was doubly alone. She was alone within herself. She couldn't even say who she was. So what is her identity? We mentioned the two names. Let's spend a moment on those two names. And I brought you only a couple of midrashim on the sources. One of them is Hadassah has a sweet fragrance, but a bitter taste. She was sweet to Mordecai, but bitter to Haman. In other words, what that text is saying is Hadassah's her real name. Esther reveals her hiddenness, and we really need to look at her qualities as Hadassah. Another one is that she had a deep olive complexion, which I find very interesting, but also that the Hadassah, the leaves of this plant, have a sweet fragrance, but they're only released when the leaves are bruised and crushed. You release the sweet fragrance when the leaves are bruised and crushed. How true that can be of some great heroes. At that moment of greatest oppression, that's when their sweet fragrance emerges. And I think that then suggests perhaps Esther's the real name and Hadassah's the symbolic name. That second reading. And in fact, we have midrashim that take us in both directions. Some say Esther's the real name, Hadassah's the symbolic name, and others say Hadassah's the real name, and Esther's the symbolic name. I tend to go with the latter, Esther is the symbolic name, because of the hiddenness nature. And perhaps this goes back to what I said at the beginning, at this moment of prophecy when her parents, and we learn, by the way, that her father's name is Abichail, we'll learn that a bit later, that at that moment where her parents named her, they were actually naming Hadassah for this quality of releasing her sweetest fragrance at that moment of greatest oppression, of pressure. Did you want to ask? Yes, Dov. Now, there's another way of reading these two names, both Esther and Mordecai, that they're not Hebrew names as well. And this is, again, why also I tend towards thinking of Hadassah as her real name, leaving open the option that it was a pseudonym, because Esther and Mordecai don't appear as Jewish names. Esther is definitely related to Astarte, Ashtad, the different names, and Mordecai to Marduk. We see the parallels in Persian and Babylonian texts. Again, does it matter, and what does it mean? Does it matter? What does it mean? If it matters, what does it mean? How assimilated they might have been, and they might have had as their first names that were not Hebrew names. And it goes back to a whole area of this story, which I haven't touched upon and don't know, we can't explore in depth, is this whole story is a paradigm for diaspora living and the edge of diaspora living. Diaspora living at the moment where the Jewish community felt so much at home that all the names were Persian names and all the vessels of the temple are now profane because we've lost any sense of protecting them and keeping our identity, and everybody goes to the feasts of the king and so on and so forth. And that's a whole subtext in this Purim story, absolutely. Okay, what else can we tell us about our names? Just that there are other names, of course, about that we are given or that are given to Esther. She's sometimes known as Ayelet HaShachar, which is a very interesting concept of that she's like the dawn breaking through. I want to come back to that time permitting. But that's that there are other possible names for Esther as well. But it doesn't just say she kept her name hidden, which could have been one of the answers. It says she did not reveal her, and I'm reading again the English, her nationality or her lineage. Now, what was her lineage? We learned that Mordecai was from the tribe of Benjamin. We learned that she's a cousin, but it wouldn't necessarily mean that she was from the tribe of Benjamin. However, Midrash again ascribes to her the tribe of Benjamin. And what do we know about the tribe of Benjamin from the blessing of Yaakov to his sons? He says, Benjamin is like a ravenous wolf. What's a ravenous wolf? Waiting for the right time to strike and then devouring the prey. And it seems that Esther cannot divulge her nationality or background. She can't. How would it be if she went around saying, well, actually, I'm from the tribe that's going to wait for the right moment and then I'm going to attack and devour the prey? Of course not. She had to keep in the back of her mind, keep quiet, not reveal that she was in this palace for a purpose. The purpose had been hidden from her. She did not know what the purpose was. That glimpse of prophecy had disappeared, but she knew there was a purpose, and she knew as a Benjaminite that that purpose would come to her when the time was right. Here we go. We need adjustment. Thank you. Okay. Now, we know, and the other thing is, I put on the text. Did I put on the text about Mordecai's name? Just this idea that in Aramaic, Mordecai also, that the Mordecai could be related to the idea of Hadassah, which I liked very much, a spice that diffuses fragrance over only after it has been processed. So there's a relationship between the name Mordecai and the name Hadassah, which I only discovered in preparation for this session, so I thought that was a nice new one. Anyway, we know how the story goes on, that Esther finds favor with the king. And with the way that she finds favor is very interesting, and I'm now on verse 15 in front of you in the text. And in verse 15, and I might have to do this with my screen to make it work. Oh, here we go. Yes, there we go. In verse 15, it says, now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, see, that's the first time we read it, Mordecai's uncle, who had taken her for a daughter, came to go to the king. She requested nothing except what Haggai the king's chamberlain, the guard of the women, would say. And Esther obtained grace in the eyes of all who beheld her. Now, there's a couple of things. First of all, Abihail means my father had strength. It's now used as a girl's name, but we understand this as the father. Now, it may be that she is remembering. Remember, I told you Midrashim that she's come to Mordecai at a very early age and she's been nurtured by him. So it's highly unlikely that she remembered her father. But there are possibilities. Number one, she remembered what she'd been told about her father. Or number two, she had a deep sense that her father had been heroic. What does that mean? That she'd been put on this earth to follow in his footsteps. Because remember, she's hidden her heritage, but now she's got a glimpse. She remembers at the moment that she's about to do what she least wants to do. I did tell you that there's a midrash that she was married to Mordecai. In that midrashic tradition, her time to go to the king is the time of her ruin. Because from the moment she goes to the king, she's now lost. to Jewish life, isn't she? She's now an adulteress, if that's the case. And remember, according to halakha, you can give up your life rather than being forced into an adulterous relationship. So her possibilities here, it's really very, very terrifying. But even if she's not married to Mordechai, there's a terrifying thing. Now, what does she do? Look, I love this verse because when I read it as a child, I read it as one way saying, she didn't want anything, it says. She didn't want anything. She just wanted to go as she was. She wanted to just appear to the king the way that she, in her natural beauty, which we've already been told is there. We already know she has natural beauty. But it doesn't quite say that. It says something a little bit different. It says she requested nothing except what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the guard of the women, would say. And what Yoram Hazoni brings here, and if you haven't read his book on Esther, I highly recommend it. Very, very readable and gives a new contemporary perspective. And what he says here is this reflects something of Esther's inner essence. She knew how to please. So she didn't just want to go in her natural beauty. She wanted to go the way Haggai told her to go, and to take his advice, and to take what he offered, so he would feel pleased. He would think that he had had something to do with her success. And at this point, Khazoni draws parallels with another character with whom the Midrash draws parallels, and that is Yosef. And there are many parallels, literary parallels, in the Megillat Esther and the Yosef stories. And those literary parallels include, at this point, the bathing in ointment. That's one of the things that we see as a literary parallel. But there are many others. But I'm now dealing not just with the literary parallels, but also with the narrative, the parallels in the narrative. And what we see here is just as Yosef slowly, through deferring to those in power, climbed his way up in the ranks of the foreign palace, and in doing so, saved the Jewish people, Esther's doing the same thing. She is earning favor with those who are in power and not doing anything to rock the boat so that she's in the best possible position to save her people. So we see the parallel with Yosef. And what did I say before about Rachel? There's more. We said that Esther kept secrets. So did Rachel. Remember, Rachel and Leah kept secrets. And from about who each other were and the marriage night and so on, they kept secrets. The Trafim comes even later, that she kept secrets from her father. Even beforehand, Rivka keeps secrets. But who was a great secret keeper as well? We have to keep coming around in circles, you see, in this story. Benjamin. According, again, to our best understanding of the text, Benjamin knows that Yosef has been sold into slavery and never reveals it. He is not guilty, but he knows. So Benjamin is also a secret keeper, and there's also a story of Shaul keeping secret the fact that he has been anointed until the right time. So keeping secrets is a family trait. And so when Esther is earning favor and using the keeping of secrets to earn that favor, she's following in the models of our people. And this goes back to the fact that when she remembers her father Abihail, it's saying she remembers the heroism of the Jews who have preceded her. I don't have to say for sure. I can read this text and I don't have to say for sure that in order to know who Esther is, I have to trace back the lineage of a guy called Abihail. No. I have to trace back the lineage or understand the heritage she got from being a Jewish woman. And by the way, the name Jewish was first applied to the tribe of Benjamin, who joined with the tribe of Judah. They merged, so they become, in a way, the first Jews. So she's a Jewish woman who has all this in her background and in her mind, and she knows it. and she still doesn't reveal who she is, because revealing who she is, not keeping the secret, is going to undermine her ability to do the job that she's put there to do. So now, we have the story. She came and the queen was terrified. Oh, sorry, I left out a bit. Remember the story? That she's already been in, she's already earned some favor, and then Mordecai appears in the courtyard in sackcloth. You remember that? And it seems, if we look at what happens when Esther first hears that Mordecai has appeared with sackcloth, Esther's maidens and chamberlains are now on chapter 4, verse 4, the next bit of text I've brought there. In chapter 4, verse 4, Esther and her maidens and her chamberlains came and told her, and the queen was extremely terrified and sent clothing to dress Mordecai and take off his sackcloth, but he didn't accept it. What's she upset about? He's behaving strangely outside the palace. She wants him to look the part, just as she is looking the part. It seems at the beginning, she doesn't ask the question, why are you in sackcloth? What's wrong? She wants him to get out of the sackcloth. Her first response is, he could be spoiling the game by drawing attention to himself, by not being dressed properly. But it's only after he refuses to change, only then does she ask the question about what's going on. So then Esther summoned Hathach, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he'd appointed before her, and she commanded him concerning Mordecai to know what this was and why. And only then Mordecai tells her what's going on, after he said, I can't dispose of the sackcloth. Something really serious is happening, and you have to hear why, not just keep covering up. And then Mordecai says to her this wonderful line. Mordecai says to her she has to go to the king, and she gives this wonderful line, and it's verse 11 here. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that any man or woman who comes to the king into the inner court who is not summoned, there is but one law for him, to be put to death, except the one to whom the king extends a golden scepter, that he may live, but I have not been summoned to come to the king these 30 days. Now, again, there are many things to explore in this text, but I just want to show you what an incredible response this is. Because in a way, she's not saying no. In a way, she's saying, I wish I could, but look what will happen. He's saying that we all know that this is a rule of law, a place where laws matter. Now, the fact that it's a place where laws matter is underlying the whole story. In the whole story, laws matter, because if the king could just at whim cancel laws, then this whole proclamation by Haman to kill the Jewish people, it could just convince and cancel it. But that's not the way it works in this land. This is, again, one of the farcical aspects of this whole story, of course, that ridiculous laws prevail. But isn't that one of the farces of all of world history, and particularly Jewish history, that farcical laws prevail? A law that shouldn't be a law is promulgated, and I don't need to remind anybody here of the entire Nazi era and the laws that became a law, and then people had respect for the law when laws were farcical. But that's one of the messages of this story, that there's a time when laws should be broken. But in this response, it's just said, no, this is a place of law, and there are rules here. And the king won't break his own rules. He's made a rule, and now he won't break it. So he said, I can't go before him. He said, and if I do go before him, if I do, then he'll have to kill me, because that's the law. And then what use will I be if he kills me? And then she has one more rider. And anyway, he hasn't shown an exception for me that makes me think he would override the law. So it's a complicated response. It's not just a, no, I can't do it. It's actually it shows that she understands the way that this kingdom runs, that this kingdom does run according to rules and regulations, and even when it's farcical. So even though the king may not want to kill her, he will feel bound that he has to kill her. That's what she's saying. But Mordecai responds, comes back with this yes, again, Midrashim suggests that he had different women coming through. There's a beautiful Midrash that says that Mordecai set it up so that she would not have to go to him very often at all. And some have it. Look, there's a midrash that says at this moment, when it says, remember it says she was terrified? There's a midrash that says she terrified, meaning she miscarried because she was actually carrying the king's child and whatever. There's that side of it. But there's another side of it that says at no point in all this history did they manage to actually have intercourse, have sexual relations, because Mordecai set it up that she would only appear to him when she was menstruating, and that he, like her, wouldn't want to engage in sexual relations. So the 30 days, yes. So yes, there are midrashim that build on the 30 days. But either way, let's leave that for the moment and say, look, let's look at Mordecai's response to her. Mordecai ordered to reply to Esther. Remember, he's not speaking her directly. Do not imagine to yourself that you will escape in the king's house from among all the Jews. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and rescue will arise for the Jews from elsewhere, and you and your father's household will perish, and who knows whether at this time, a time like this, you will attain the kingdom. Now, Mordecai's reply is very tough and very real. And there are multiple ways of reading it. But the way I read it is this. He's saying to Esther this, you know, you might physically survive and the rest of us will be killed in this kingdom. It's possible, but then you're not surviving as a Jew. You're not surviving as a Jew. Or, alternatively, it might be discovered that you're a Jew and you'd be killed too. Or it could be that you're the only one who's killed, because now you're going before the king and God will send his messengers, or a redeemer, or save the rest of us. And you, because you are a betrayer of your people, God will find a way of punishing you. I don't like that last answer, because that sort of, it's like holding Mount Sinai over the Jewish people and saying accept the Torah or else. And I don't actually, I just wanted to put it to you as a reading of the text. But I read the text the other way, saying you might survive. The rest of us might die, but you won't be surviving as a Jew. And Esther's response is, you're right, I've got to do something. And now I think she says, perhaps this is it. This is the moment. I'm the wolf, I'm Benjamin. This is the moment where I have to pounce and take action. And I want to again show you that Yoram Chazoni says something really beautiful here about civil disobedience. And I'm very conscious that we don't have much time, so let's do this quickly. She says, in all of antiquity, the Bible is the only document that consistently advances the fundamental ideas that are known as civil disobedience. Okay, that's already an interesting comment, that that's what the Torah is about. An illicit court appearance by Mordecai in mourning attire, his certainly illegal incitement of Esther to go before the king unsummoned, despite the prohibition against approaching the king, and Esther's two separate decisions to break this law are, of course, civil disobedience. She faces a king, and this he goes on to say why her bravery is greater than that of many others. She faces a king who has already made a decision, a vizier who has staked his career on making sure the plan is executed, and a prescribed penalty of death for herself if she makes the wrong move. For her, the decision to approach the king will open a political war within the palace, something with which she has no experience and upon which the very lives of the Jews of the empire depend. We know that the decision to take the gamble is particularly painful for Esther on another level as well. Like Joseph, she is a personality that thrives on attracting favor and affections of powerful people. So the bravery, the heroism of Esther is multiplied because it goes against her personality. And this is the true test. And again, I am reminded of Rambam, Maimonides. Rambam, who says that all of us are born with strengths and weaknesses. And we cannot use our weaknesses as excuses. We all have to work on different ones to bring ourselves up to where we should be. Esther finds herself in the position where it is precisely her weakness that is most needed. She has to go against her personality. And this makes it particularly heroic because she's striving against what she really wants to do. She wants to please people, and she can't, or she has to take the risk that she won't. She has to break the law. And then we go on and we have this, and I'm going to race through the second half of the sheet. She says, she approaches the king, this beautiful midrashim, and I love these midrashim. The midrashim actually say that as she's going towards the king, there are all these barriers that are put in front of her. She has to go through 7 chambers, and it gives all sorts of mystical and magical things that impede her. And again, it reminds me of the story of the Akedah, when Abraham is going to sacrifice, according to the midrashim, he's going to sacrifice Yitzchak, and he's constantly, there are barriers put in his way that he has to overcome. When you have to do something that you really don't want to do. And it appears exactly at that time that the worst obstacles come, right? So it's like, and that is so human. It's so much the human experience of life. The things that life throws at us that we have to work hardest when we're doing something we really don't want to do. And that's what I love, again, about this story. Esther's doing something she really doesn't want to do, yet she has to do it with such zeal, with such passion. And she gets before the king, and the king says, up to half the empire. So again, I'm reminded of another story. And this is what this Megillah does to me. I'm reminded of the story when Yochanan ben Zakkai has come out of the old city of Jerusalem. Remember, the temple's about to be destroyed. And he stands before Titus, and he solves this problem. And Titus, it's a long story. And Titus says to him, whatever you want, make a request. And he says, I want Yavna. And you know what Rabbi Akiva says about him? Rabbi Akiva says he was a fool. He should have said, save the temple. And he didn't. And we could say, but then the Talmud comes and explains why he didn't. But we could say the same thing here. Esther's just been told, you can have everything you want. So why doesn't she straight away come out with it and ask for some really big things? Because like Yochanan ben Zakkai in history, whom we have recorded, she knew that that would be risky, that he could say no to everything if she overstepped the limit. She had to do this slowly. She had to do it her way. And she does it her way because this is about a kapara, an atonement, and a tikkun, a repair. The story is opened with 2 feasts. She needs to have 2 feasts. She needs to repair what's gone wrong. Haman's law has been passed. She needs to have laws passed. She needs to go through the legal system. And if you look at the way that she speaks, to Ahasuerus, she speaks in such deferential terms. She doesn't in any way undermine his authority. And you know what she says? She says it's that foreigner, the Agagite, who's caused the problems here. And I'm a foreigner too, but have pity on me, because I'm a foreigner who only wants to respect your laws. And he's a foreigner who wants to manipulate your laws. Think how she responds, asking him to love her, to have pity on her, not asking him to overturn the way he runs his empire. And so she is successful. And we have a couple of things that I cannot leave, and I've been told that my time is up and I cannot leave without looking at the last pieces on the sheet. And I'm not going to read them, because to read them, you can read them, everybody can read them themselves. I want to tell you what's there, and I want to share with you the amazing thing. First thing, Adin Steinsaltz. Adin Steinsaltz says that Esther's heroism is the truest, greatest form of heroism there can be, because she was prepared to give up what was most precious to her, her identity Remember what goes through her mind? She remembers her father, Abihail. She was prepared to give up her identity for all those years, and maybe forever if it was required. And she certainly was prepared to give up her reputation. Because what's happened? She's a Jewish girl with a foreign king. That's not good. Doesn't look good on paper. She gave up her expectations in life to get married, to have children, to be part of the community. Esther's sacrifice, according to Adin Steinsaltz, was amazing. She was amazingly heroic. But he also talks about the fact that this is a story of hidden messages. Hidden or revealed? What does it mean? I have to share with you that Rav Kook, one of my ideological heroes, always chose to write the word historia with a tuf, not a tet. Historia with a tet is the Greek word history. It's very secular. Historia with a tuf is the same word as Esther, Hester, the hidden activities of God. Our history, all of our history, is actually controlled by the divine. It's not historia at all, it's historia. God is controlling everything that goes on. And the Megillah is not a Megillah, a scroll at all. It's Megaleh. It reveals. It reveals to us the hiddenness, the hidden power before all that goes on. And the beautiful story, and I finish with this, the quote from Rav Levi of Berdichev, or the story at the bottom of the page. It's a great miracle if a small army defeats a large army. We all agree, small army, the miracle of this state is a miracle of a small army defeating a large army. But it's less of a miracle if the troops are led by a king who's out the front of the battle, and he's very skillful, and he's very wise, and he's very brave, and the troops follow him. Then it's a miracle of one caliber. But think how great the miracle really is if the king decides not to appear on the day of the battle, and that small army still wins. That's even double, triple, multiple miracle. And that's the story of Esther. It's historia. It's meta-history. It's greater than history because the king wasn't present to lead the troops. Who was present? Esther, a hidden hero who's revealed Megaleh through the Megillah. Chag Purim Sameach.